Creative Chats podcast with Mike Brennan. Welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artist makers and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. I'd love to invite you to stop by dailycreativehabit.com. I have created all sorts of resources for you because I truly believe that when you create, we all win. So I want to see as many of you stepping into your creativity fully, closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I want to help you do that. So I've created resources like the Daily Creative Habit Journal. I've written a book, Make Fun a Habit. I have all sorts of free resources like this podcast and a Facebook group called Daily Creative Habit. Also, the paid membership for Daily Creative Habit, where we get together with like-minded creators, all pushing in the same direction, encouraging each other, and saying we're going to show up every single day to create something to get our work out there into the world. So if you would like to be a part of any of those things, again, stop by dailycreativehabit.com or simply visit my website, which is mikebrennan.me. Hey, we've got an amazing episode of Creative Chats coming up for you here today. But before we get to that, I want to let you know about another opportunity for you. And yes, I know I'm always talking about opportunities for you because I believe in your ability to create. I believe with my whole heart that when you create, we all win. And so I'm always coming up with new ways of getting you to be able to tap into your creativity, to show up and create every day or as often as you can. And so I want to invite you into a new 15-day creative challenge. And this is going to start June 1st, 2024. This time around, there is a fee of $9, which is basically 60 cents a day for you to invest in your creativity. I think that's kind of a no-brainer price. And this is for you. If you're looking for a kickstart, a jumpstart to your creativity, maybe you've been trying and kind of doing it in fits and spurts, and maybe you joined us for the last 30-day creative challenge back in January, and since then you've kind of fallen off again and you need a little bit of a kickstart. This would be a great opportunity for you to join us. And 15 days doesn't sound like a lot, and it's going to be short, manageable creative acts that are going to be prompts for you every single day. You will be able to do this. Trust me. Again, we're talking 10, 15 minutes a day, but it's really just to get things moving and started again if you've been stalled out for a little while. So if you want information about this, you want to join the challenge, go to mikebrennan.me/15-challenge. And I'll put that in the show notes so you can click that and check that out and join us for the challenge that starts June 1st, 2024. Now for this episode, I am actually going to break this episode up into two parts. Part one being this episode. And this was a panel discussion that I was a part of called Creativity for Happiness, talking about creativity and mental health, mental fitness, happiness. And it was really a wonderful conversation that we had via Zoom. And it was myself giving a little bit of context and story for my daily creative habit process and journey. And then Angie Carel, who actually talks about the importance of community. She runs an amazing community at simplydailydrawing.com. And we had Amanda McNamara, who really talked about art as therapy and talked about just someone who is bipolar showing up and creating and her experiences around that. And lastly, we talk a little bit of science, the science behind all of this with Glen Stevens. And it was really an amazing Zoom call that we had. And there were questions at the end as well. That will be featured on next week's episode in part two. But check out this episode, especially if you're someone who has at any time struggled with maybe depression, anxiety, some form of mental health battle, and you are someone who has been either using creativity as a tool in your toolbox, or perhaps that's what your livelihood is, and you've been challenged with needing to show up and be creative because that's what you get paid for, but then also wrestling with some of these other things that I just mentioned, you'll want to pay attention to these 2 episodes. So I'm going to just move out of the way here, and we're going to dive into part 1 of Creativity for Happiness. And I hope that this really speaks to you. I think it really will. So here we go.
And we're just going to talk about our sort of story and topic at hand, with the goal of each of you hopefully getting a little nugget of inspiration to carry through in your upcoming days and weeks in your own creative journey. Because we know if anyone has been doing art, anything creative for any period of time, we know that that comes with ups and downs and inspiration and lack of motivation and everything in between. But I can tell you for the last 3.5, 4 years that art and creativity has transformed my life and given me tools to cope with day to day that I never expected when I started doing simple daily drawing. But I'm going to pass the mic to Mike and let you. But anyway, I'm going to hand it over to Mike. Mike's going to talk for just a little bit. He has a very interesting story, and I think it's highly relatable to just about everyone. So a quick introduction, Mike, and then I'll let you have the stage.
Sure. Yeah. So, like Angie said, this topic is really close to my heart too, because if you track my journey and story, it's really, there's a lot of this, right? I think all of us can relate to that, moments where we're just like, we're at rock bottom, we've experienced some things and we're like, how the heck did we get here? How did this happen? And, so, for me, this whole journey has been one of continually evolving, continually assessing myself and seeing where are things at with me, even creatively going, how do I make space for this in my life? And what does it look like? And, when I was a kid, I was the typical artist kid who was drawing and painting and making greeting cards for family members, giving it to them, seeing their faces light up. And that moment specifically, I remember this moment, handing that card to my parents and them saying, you created this for me. And a big smile appeared and they hung it on the fridge. And that cemented something in me of like, wow, I can create something and give it away to somebody else and have their life be impacted, even if it's just bringing a smile. And somehow intuitively, I knew I wanted to do that as much as I could with the rest of my life. So my background is graphic design, went to art school, that whole track, and went into the field of graphic design and had several different jobs and eventually hit this point where I was just burnt out. The pace of things, there were deadlines every 2 weeks on a magazine that I was working on. And it was so very demanding and taxing that I didn't really get to enjoy what I just did. And then I was on to something else. And then that also coupled with the fact that I didn't realize how important it was for me to have the interaction with the person at the end of the process, the person who, the end user, if you will, of what I created. Like I'd create this magazine, put it out there, it would go out into wherever it goes. And I never got to experience somebody actually thumbing through and seeing how my work made an impact on their life. And so that piece also later on coming to understand was really important to me. But because of all those things happening, I was getting burned out and I was like, that's it. I guess I'm just done. And so I hung it up. I quit and I went in a completely different career, and I didn't do any art, even like personally, for about 10 years. And over those 10 years, I had a lot of other things I was involved in and some other interests that I was pursuing. But at the end of those 10 years, I found myself suffering from depression, along with a bunch of life circumstances that really just put me in this place of rock bottom. I was finding that I needed to leave this other career that I was in because I was depressed. I wasn't really able to do what I needed to do. I was high functioning, depression, but still depressed and seeking help. And, it was, my dad got diagnosed with cancer very quickly and passed, and had to sell a house and move. And it was just like hit after hit after hit after hit. And this left me in this place where I was like, I don't know how I got here, and I don't know how to get out of here. And it was at that moment where I heard this voice inside saying, what if you came back to your art for you? Like, forget about clients, forget about committees, forget about budgets and all the other things that it became over time. But what if you just remembered that boy who created that card and gave it to his parents and felt good about that? Can we get back to there? And to be honest, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if that's possible. And so that led me to be open to this idea that I came across, which was a 365-day art making journey, which terrified me because I was like, I haven't done art for the past 10 years. I don't know if I can show up every single day for this next year and do something, nor do I know what that would even look like. So I was kind of at this point where I'm like, well, what do I have to lose at this point, right? Like I'm already at rock bottom, so try something. And so that whole idea I started to embrace and said, okay, well, let me actually use some of the things I learned in design world in terms of short deadlines. And so I started to string together small projects and like 7 days of this, 14 days of that, 30 days of this other thing. And it was a place for me to just experiment and play and see what happens. The very first day that I sat down, I was sitting at a Starbucks and opened up the sketchbook. I blew the dust off of it, right? Because it was in hiding, and took my pens, and I'm like, I hope these still work. And I sat there and drew the Starbucks coffee cup that was right in front of me. And it was awful. It was terrible. Like, it was a horrible rendering. And when it was done, I felt embarrassed. And I was like, I can't draw and create at the capacity that I once was at. And I had to give myself some grace because 10 years had gone by. I hadn't done anything. Of course, I can't just pick up where I left off. It's a muscle that I haven't exercised in a long time. And so I was at a crossroads even at day one. And I said, am I going to continue to pursue this, even though I'm looking at something on the page that's pretty hideous and embarrassing? And if somebody knew I went to art school and saw that, they'd be like, dude, what happened? But I decided I'm going to write day one at the top of this page. And I'm going to show up for day two and see what happens. There was something about that I realized it's not so much about this specific piece of work, but it's really more about the journey. It's really more about the process that's unfolding. And it was important for me to realize that because it took a lot of pressure off me to perform and to sit down and have a quote masterpiece every single time I sat down to create something. So this whole process led me to the place where I was engaged again and trying things and allowing myself to play, allowing myself to experiment and break things and try all sorts of different methods and tools and stuff, because it didn't quote matter in terms of my career. This was a personal journey I was on. So I got to the end of a year and I was like, great, I did it. Well, now what? And so I felt like I need to keep going on this. I haven't really got to the bottom of things. And so I kept going. And the more that I kept showing up every single day and doing something. And by the way, in the beginning, all I could manage was like 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes a day, because I was suffering from depression. I didn't have the energy. I didn't have the ability to really pour myself into that. But I said 10, 15 minutes a day is certainly a lot better than nothing, or waiting for a whole weekend or a whole afternoon or large blocks. And so as I started to engage in this process and started to lean in more and more, I started to realize that there were things happening inside of me. There were discoveries and rediscoveries that were happening as far as me as a person, as well as my creativity. I started to really understand like, oh, I really like doing this type of thing and not that. I started to find my voice and my style as an artist, which was something that always seemed kind of elusive to me. It was kind of one of those things where I'm like, oh, the muse must have visited that person and delivered their voice and style. Maybe I'll be next, right? Realizing it's not that way. It's you put the work in and then you discover like, oh, this is it. It emerges. And so that started happening. And then I kept going, and it was year after year. And then I guess probably about 4 years in, I realized there's a process at work here that isn't just for me, but I think it's for other people too. And so that's where, if you hang around me long enough, you'll hear me talk about daily creative habit. That's where this process came out of, is me examining my journey and going, oh, this is the process. This is what was helpful for me in my journey. And so that's what I do now, is helping other people walk through that process in a variety of different means, because I realized, like, I'm not alone in this. I'm not the only one who has, been battling some mental health issues in the midst of trying to create. And especially if that's tied to your day job at all, there's a unique pressure of needing to perform because it's your career, but then also battling some mental health issues and going, I don't know how to navigate this successfully. And so creativity and art becomes a place of healing, a place of rediscovery, and a place of giving yourself a gift. Because too often, I think we say, well, I'll do that later. Like when I'm done with all the check boxes, I'll do this, it's the reward at the end. But I think when we approach it that way, we'll find that we never have time for it. We never make time for it because there's always something more practical to be done. There's always something more responsible. Yeah.
I want to just chime in real quick. I have a question for you specifically. And I also wanted to mention that the reason this is casual conversation is because if you guys have a question, feel free to chime in and ask. But my simple daily drawing premise is that people have a drawing prompt somewhere to start daily. They can interpret that prompt and post and share. But I've noticed a very specific trend in which people do this, and they're motivated and very excited for the first, say several weeks or months. And if I'm being honest with myself, I can even say that then I have even encountered it feeling like a chore. Mm-hmm. So if you create okay, I want to draw daily, I want to do this, even if it's only 5 minutes. Did it ever become a point in time for you that you were like, I just can't today. I just don't want to today? Because because of the support of my community, I actually said to myself, like, I'm giving myself permission not to draw today after I had drawn for like 3 years every single day. Just curious if you ever hit that where you felt like my daily creative habit has become a chore.
Yes. Yes, I had experienced that and still do every so often. I find that what typically happens is that when I find myself there, it's usually because I've fallen into some kind of rut, and I need to introduce a change agent. And so that might be, hey, I'm going to use some different materials, or I'm going to explore a different subject matter. Mm-hmm. I've stopped being curious about something, and I've fallen more into the rhythm and the habit, which is great because that gets me showing up. But the interest starts to wane, and that's when it starts to feel a little bit like, I don't know about this, or and of course everybody has days where they're like, I'm just not feeling this today. And sometimes you got to push through. Because again, for me, I was realizing this wasn't about the specific piece of work. It's about the journey. And for me to say, hey, if I want to say that I've shown up every single day this year, I'm going to push through even on the days where I'm like, I'm phoning it in. And the funny thing is, right, so the end of the year, I do this big collage, and it's all the images that make up that entire year. And then I add it to all the other previous years, right? And so I'm up to my 12th year.
Wow.
Where I'm doing this, right? So there's like these microscopic little images in this collage. But when I look at the year, I can see, oh, here's where I got lazy. Here's where I got a little rut. Oh, here's where I had a breakthrough. I started doing something different. And now I started to incorporate that into something else that I was doing. So it's interesting because when you do that, and I think it's important to track and measure what you're doing, because otherwise it's the sense of like, I'm doing a bunch of things, but I don't really know if it's going anywhere. I don't know what's happening. It's too nebulous. And so I think when you figure out how to track and measure, you can see your progress and you can encourage yourself. And on those days when you're feeling like, maybe I hang this up, you can look at that and go, oh, but you know what? Look, this is all that I've done so far. Keep going. You cheer yourself on.
I love that. And I just think that so many people think that, artists just can just have the ability to create every day. I'm a hyper creative. I know that I have ideas constantly, but I just, it's difficult sometimes to say, okay, I'm just going to create. And it is an action that you have to force yourself into doing. And it's not just, oh, this is so fun every day, I just play all the time. It's not like that at all. I know for a fact that your story, I know for a fact that it relates to a lot of the people in my community. And so if you guys know me and now have heard Mike's story, you can understand the overlap. It's huge. Terry, you're on mute.
I accidentally hit it. I just want to interject really quick. Mike, you've helped me already because I went through almost identical what you were saying about the loss of your mother quickly or your family member quickly, and just the having to push through things because I'm working on something right now and I feel like I've hit a wall. And so this is helping me already. So I appreciate what you've shared so far.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Terry.
Well,
I
was just going to say, Mike, you've also helped me kind of with my creative thinking as well. And I can also relate. And Angie, with both of you, I would say that I always have to tell myself, just get paint on canvas and done is better than perfect. And that's just what I have to continuously tell myself, especially in a state of depression or hitting that wall or what have you. But it's always like, just get paint on canvas. It doesn't have to be perfect. And just, like you said, 5-15 minutes, just apply it. But yeah, I still struggle with courage, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, the courage to paint because of failing, yet the process of getting done is better than perfect. So
we used to always say a simple daily drawing, done is better than perfect. Like it was just like a mantra that we always were saying. And I think they should revisit that. So anyway, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mike. I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about the value of community and what that means to me, because simple daily drawing erupted through COVID, and I did not intend to create an art community, and it was not my goal. It happened quickly, but I think the reason it organically happened so quickly is because so many people needed a place where they could express themselves and not have to be critiqued or judged with their artwork. But the point that I wanted to make here is that just last week, I've had an incredibly busy schedule, pretty like running a marathon for the last few weeks, with daughters graduating, one getting married, and work and so forth. And just last week, I just received a text from one of our community members that said, "How are you?" And I was like, because I haven't posted anything on social media or other than what I've been going. And on social media, it appears that my life is just amazingly beautiful, all the good things I share. And I just got a text that said, "How are you?" And it was from a member of our Mighty Networks community. And I thought, you know what? He knows that I haven't been active on that platform for a few days. And he probably understands, like, just knows that there's something that might be distracting me. And I thought to myself, that's what doesn't happen on social media. So my journey has helped me realize that community is different than followers, and community is different than likes and shares and comments. And getting involved and being a part of a community that allows you to be creative, unapologetically creative, is to me of the highest value, because it's a place where you can, draw a stick figure or draw something that's amazing and still get the exact same support and encouragement along the way. It's also community. And I am a community builder, but I'm specifically talking about creative community. is a place where you aren't scrolling through social, seeing your community's post mixed within all of the other posts that are political or just getting boosted in the algorithm because they're, shocking topics or so forth. It's a place where you can be focused and you go to without having all of those other distractions. And in that place, you can be depressed, you can be happy, you can be sad, you can be overjoyed. All of these emotions are acceptable, and you can be free to be who you are without having, all of the other, garbage surrounded by it. When you talk about increased happiness, like this is creativity for happiness. I was told once, and I think Glen, it might have been at a story brand thing, but we were told that there's two ways that you can increase your happiness. You can increase your joy. You can try to do things that increase your joy, or you can decrease your wants. And so it's a fraction, we all want things. And when we say we want things, we want them because we think that by getting these things, then we will increase our joy. So the fraction or the ratio, joys to ones. And the thing about social media is that, just like I just said, I post my best. Oh, we just got someone in here. Post my best days, my most celebrated experiences, the cutest pictures of my son, the best angles of my temple. Like, I post all of these on social media, but the reality is every time I get on social media, I start comparing my best moments to everyone else's best moments. And then I start to want their things, and I want for their lives, and I want their travels, and I live a very good life. I love my life, but I still by default tend to compare myself to what I'm scrolling in the doom scroll. And that's where I wanted to just touch on, is just the value of community and finding a place, whether it's in your local coffee shop, whether it's an online space where you feel safe and comfortable and supported. And it's not a place where you find yourself comparing to others. I'm not trying to be a professional artist. I don't want to be. I don't do art because I'm good at it. The only reason I create is, first of all, to exercise my creativity, my creative skills, to play and to have fun. And if it became a place where I were being critiqued all the time, it would become very negative for me. And so we're all on a journey. We're all using art and creativity, which I could argue is the number one valuable tool that we have in our toolkit to get through the stress and chaos of life. Art and creativity are the only thing that we absolutely need to help us get through life. And here we are in a place where we're all on a different journey for different reasons, but we need the support of a community to help us maintain the motivation to keep going. It's not about the end result. It's just like Mike said, it is totally about the journey. Some of my closest friends right now, I didn't exist in my life 3 or 4 years ago, and they are from my art community because they relate to me. They know what I'm going through. They truly understand and support me. And, that's the like-minded people. Those are the people. And so that's increasing happiness with creativity, to me, is not only finding a habit and staying up with that habit to force yourself to play, because I think that's so important, but it's also, even if it's 3 other people at your local coffee shop, finding a community that can support you along the journey. That has been literally life-changing. That's the reason I still do simple daily drawing today. I like to end all of my little soapboxes with quotes because I feel like what's the bookend here? Um, Alone we can do so little, and together we can do so much. That's Helen Keller. Because of Simple Daily Drawing and Mike, Glen, and Amanda, we're here today, reaching those of you that are in our, audience. And I betcha it changes your life just a tiny little bit. And I couldn't do that by myself, but I can do that with other people. And so that's what it's about. And that community to me is my passion and my passion project as well. And so that's my message today.
Well, thank you for having me in your community. Like I said, I said it before a lot of you got in here, that Angie has been a great mentor, great friend. We'll preface with that. Great friend and mentor, and has really welcomed me to the community and introduced me to Mike and Glen. And hi, I'm Amanda McNamara, and I am first word was lost. I am an artist. I am an artist. But I have been slacking. So that's where I really wanted to touch that. Mike has made some really good points with the 5 to 10, 15, whatever it was, minutes of just arting. And art has been a huge part of my life for a long time now. And Angie has allowed me to be on Simple Daily Drawing before, and we did a live paint and we walked like Egyptians. That was part of the song that got spoofed in there. But art for me is primarily a way to cope and manage my mental health. And I battle with bipolar 1. So there are times where the mania is the best creator. And I create paintings in, hour and a half that are quite large. And then there are times where it takes me 6 hours to do something the same size. Of course, then there's the lovely depression where I don't want to create. But I know that if I just get down to the basement, my art studio, then I can just put paint on canvas. And so the journey for me and why I love art is color. A lot of my pieces, I'd say most, are pretty bold colors, whether it be bright and vibrant and set the mood for a very happy piece, or colors that are very still bright but very heavy and emotional. I feel that the best way to express myself is through color and definitely texture. But through the transition of art, and I did go to school for graphic design, but dropped out my junior year because my major depressive episode. So I never went back. Would I? Heck no. Absolutely not. But I found through the depression, my resilience and my strength to somehow keep going. And I wouldn't have done that or wouldn't be here without my community, without my tribe, without my family that comes to my art events to be supportive. Because, 3 years ago, I went from a refrigerator to my friend Maggie. And Maggie had a studio here locally in Fort Wayne, allowed local artists to show their work, whether they were the best in the world or just getting started. And I think that she was, very impactful. Unfortunately, their studio is no longer there. But but she got me off of the refrigerator. She got me into a community, and she allowed me to have that courage that I didn't really have before. Now, whether or not that was the mania, because I was very, very manic at that time, to pursue showing in a gallery. But I did it. And I truly don't feel I would be doing art to this day if it weren't for that opportunity given within networking. Because after college and that depressive episode, I had all these ideas, but I couldn't execute because I felt like I needed this black and white guideline of, this is your criteria, this is the criteria for the project, and you're going to get graded on it, and it needs to be perfect. Which I look back now and I think, why was that my block? Why was that my roadblock? Because even when I was in college, I was not following guidelines. I wasn't following the criteria because I thought of something different. Like, we're artists. Like, of course it's going to be different than your criteria. That deserves like an A++, you know? So it didn't really make sense to me. And then I decided to put paint on canvas. They were Dollar Tree canvases. I was like, screw it, I'm just going to go for it. Fast forward, go to Maggie's gallery. The very first painting I've ever sold for $40 was bought by my old college professor. He walked in and said, I love that piece. That's the one I want. And I think my jaw and my eyes about popped out of my head. And I'm thinking, this professor approves of this painting. And here I was just thinking in my head, it's not going to be good enough. And I still hit those roadblocks because I still have my ups and downs. Whether it's just, again, human emotion and thoughts and nature, or it's the fact that I deal with a chemical imbalance in my brain, and there's a lot of fluctuation with my bipolar 1. So again, coming back to color, I feel has really allowed me again to express my thoughts, feelings, and emotions and texture. I feel I'm an aggressive painter. There are times where it's literally just, throwing the brush around and seeing what different things I can come up with. A lot of my paintings are probably, represent definitely mental health, but also incorporate art history, because I feel those artists were given oranges and not lemons like myself. And I feel that there is a story of theirs that we can learn from and use in our, just like Angie quoted Anne Frank. I mean, there's so much to learn from our past, yes, but I think that their story just needs to be carried on. But
I want to jump in here just to say something. What you just said is so. My daughter graduated from Heron School of Art in Indianapolis yesterday, and I thought what one of the keynote speakers said was just so, I don't know, so simple, but so moving. She said, you all are going to be successful in life because you know how to be criticized. And I thought to myself, I've always told my daughters, art is the most vulnerable place to be, because when you're creating what's in your head and you're putting it out there and just saying, judge me, do you like it? Like Brenda just said, you never know if other people will like what your work is or not. But you still have the courage to put it out there and just say, I did this. But we have been trained that we are capable of receiving criticism without defensiveness. And we're open to criticism. We're open to learning and growing. And I think that that's something that, especially when I don't have a chemical imbalance, part of me thinks maybe, but no. But when you're in one of the manic or depressive states and you're actually, it just makes it even more so, but having the courage to be vulnerable and to say, I might not think this is amazing, but I'm still going to put it out there for the world to see, I think is such an important point. I just wanted to jump in because just last night when she said that, she just took the mic and she said, you all will be successful because you have learned how to be criticized, which is a skill that we need. We need that skill. We shouldn't just go through life being applauded for everything we ever do. We need to learn how to take criticism, and it's not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. It helps us improve, or at least think about something differently. And so,
most
sorry to
definitely.
interrupt. I just
No,
thought that
you're
that was so right on.
good. Like you said, casual conversation.
Yeah.
I, off of that note, I would say, well, first off, thank you. But as far as the courage to just say, sometimes I say there aren't kids on here, but I tend to say I'm bird shit on a windshield. And that comes with the nature of just, again, putting paint on canvas. And the way I see it is, it can't be wrong. How can it be wrong if it's from you? How can it be wrong? Or, obviously take guidance of someone who says, hey, maybe you could do it this way. I'm not saying not take that corrective criticism. I'm simply saying, how can it be wrong for anything that you think of that you actually create or put out into the world? Because no one's done it before. And there is going to be room for that corrective criticism. And there is going to be room for someone to fall in love with it. I think that even doing like a replica, like incorporating Van Gogh. I have my painting right here. I keep referring. Can I grab it? I'm gonna grab it. He's never had this curly of a mustache before.
Oh,
He's never stood beside his flowers.
I love that. It's very, very cool.
Taking him out of his element, but putting him somewhere close to it.
Mhm.
So just a way to make it different, because I feel different. But I do want to say back to color, because it's been the primary thing, and with the corrective criticism, when I've met people along the way after creating a creative mood log, which is a bipolar 1 symptoms tracker. It's a color theory bipolar 1 symptoms tracker. And I feel that through my journey of the depression, of coming up with this mock idea of, okay, let's print off 8x11 brains, because I didn't have communication or didn't feel I could communicate. And I used color because that's the best way I felt I could express myself. And that was kind of my art, yay, tracking my mood. But I mean, it got me to put color on paper. And so it's through, crazy meetings with Angie and a lot of support of creating a color theory symptoms brain log or symptoms tracker here. To utilize color, because I feel that a lot of people who struggle with mental health, of course, we have a communication barrier. We don't want to talk about it. Still to this day, even with my family, I struggle to say, I am very depressed right now. I don't want to come to Easter. This is what's going on. Sometimes I still almost catch myself saying, I have a migraine. I just feel off. And that is
that was your excuse. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's more acceptable than me having to say my brain is shutting down right now. But I have a very supportive family that love me for who I am and all I am. And if I could give even just an inkling of their love to a community where people feel alone or don't feel that they have that support system, that is my passion as well, bringing into the community part. Especially for those who struggle with mental health, because it has been, the ups and downs, just like Mike said. And I think that we all just have to continue to find that silver lining, that there is that joy that you're talking about. And you just literally have to keep going. And I know I wouldn't be where I am if, again, I didn't have my supportive family, and boyfriend and his family are amazing. They come to the art shows, even if it's the same art, even if it's not new art. And that support makes a huge difference. And that's my community. But
Yeah.
with art, being that release and outlet and movement and the texture and everything, I know that's something that has really kept me in line with battling with bipolar, so I don't do erratic things and get off tangent and do things I shouldn't be doing. So
thank you. I'm gonna have to hop over to Glen, but I love how open and like just upfront you are about what you struggle with, because talking to you has opened my eyes to what bipolar is. And I think that we need to be more open as a society and embracing, and I think Glenn will probably talk on it, but mental fitness over mental health. But it's a great segue because you're talking about your brain, and here we are.
Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.